Hello everyone and welcome back to BSL Club. This is the place where you can learn BSL and become more deaf aware. Today's video is a little bit different. Have you started BSL Level 1? Here are some tips to help you succeed on your journey. Are you ready? Number 1, be aware. Like any language, BSL is as much about culture as it is about language, and that's really important. I think sometimes as a hearing person, as a hearing people, sometimes we can focus on just the language and forget that there is a group of people, deaf people, with their own culture and history that is intrinsically linked to that language. It's really important because sometimes you end up offending deaf people when you don't really mean to, but you're not particularly aware that actually it's not just the language that you're learning. You have to learn the culture. You need to be involved as much as possible in the culture and be a part of that culture. So to get the best out of the language, and actually deaf culture is really enriching, and it's been a privilege for me to know and deaf people over the years and to have deaf friends. It's really important, I think, for my children to know that there are other people in the world who are different and communicate differently from them. And I think they're really important experiences that you can learn when you are involved, or when you meet deaf people and you're involved in their culture. So I think that's a hearing person mistake I think sometimes we can make, where we divorce the language from the culture. So try as much as possible to make deaf friends, get involved in deaf events. Sometimes you can go to cultural events. They'll have where there's BSL interpreting, and you can meet deaf people there, and that way. There are also many deaf clubs up and down the country that you can visit and get involved in. But at the moment, I'm filming this at the time of our COVID pandemic. It's really tricky to get out and meet new people. So I would really encourage you to, if you're on Facebook, to join some BSL groups on Facebook. I've joined some groups and I find them really helpful. You can learn new signs there, and you can actually get to know some of the topics, some of the things that deaf people are interested in, some of the things that are important in deaf culture. You begin to learn that through the conversations that you're having online. So I would really encourage you to do that. Obviously here on YouTube, you're going to meet a lot of deaf and hearing people who use BSL, and I think that's important. But I'll definitely encourage you to seek out deaf people that you can speak to. That obviously will help your BSL. It will help you with your receptive skills, but actually I think it will just help overall. So that's my first tip. Tip number 2, BSL is not Makaton. So sometimes people, particularly I find people who perhaps worked in schools with children with learning needs, have learnt Makaton, different signs to help children communicate in that educational setting. And then they want to start learning British Sign Language and think that they are similar or the same. They are not. So Makaton is a signed system which was developed fairly recently by a group of people who have borrowed some signs from British Sign Language, but some signs are not part of British Sign Language at all. British Sign Language, on the other hand, is a language with its own grammar and syntax. I have a video all about what is BSL, which I'll link up for you. So the take-home message from that is forget any Makaton you've learned and just focus on BSL that you're learning in class. Tip number 3, don't forget signs can be regional. So sometimes I get this some comments on my videos saying, oh, well, I've learned a different sign for numbers, for example. And that's absolutely right. BSL is a language that has developed over time, just like any other language, in different regions of the country. And depending on where you live, you will have learnt different signs for different things. And they all are a part of the language and all are acceptable. So I would encourage you to learn as many variety of signs as you can. So for example, I have learnt the sign for 6 like this, 6. But I know many people sign 6. And you need to know that, because if you speak to a deaf person who is from a different region of the country, they may be signing 6. And if you're not aware and you're not careful to look at their lip pattern and so forth, you might think, oh, what's that? I'm getting confused. So better for you to just embrace all the different signs from different regions of the country and be aware that there isn't just one sign for one thing. Tip number 4. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Now, I found this particularly difficult when I was when I first started BSL Level 1, when I did my Level 1 course years ago, because I felt quite shy and I didn't always want to interrupt and ask for clarification or ask questions. But I think you'll soon discover when you start a BSL course that teacher will really welcome that. And particularly, it's really important that you just don't sit there and kind of nod if you don't understand. That's really easy to do. And I would encourage you to interrupt and to ask a question. Now, there are signs and ways you can ask for clarification. And that's actually one of the things that I'm intending to do a video on. If you're interested in a video that will help you to learn how to ask for clarification, please comment down below and I'll put that on my priority list. Tip number 5, practice fingerspelling. Now, fingerspelling is useful aid when we're using BSL. I would encourage you not to depend on spelling out every word, which sometimes people do when they're learning BSL because they just don't have the vocabulary yet. And I understand that. But if you are having to spell names of places and people, then I think it's really useful for you to be able to spell that without looking at your hands all the time. Because if you're looking at your hands and you're not looking at the person you're speaking to, when you're using your lips to say the name as well as fingerspelling at the same time, which you want to do, that deaf person is not going to be able to have the benefit of reading your lips and your fingers at the same time. So for example, if you want to sign the place London, now we know the sign for London is London, but let's say you want to spell it out. That's what you would want to do. You'd want to lip speak the word at the same time as fingerspelling it. And you can't do that unless you are confident that what your fingers are doing without looking down at them. So I would encourage you just to practice spelling things that you have to spell on a regular basis. For example, your name. Practice spelling your name so that it flows. So when someone asks you, you can reply and spell your name quite smoothly. And you can spell it slowly if they don't understand, but you can do it in a way that shows that you're confident with spelling. And that will really help you to feel more confident when you're communicating with deaf people, especially when you're just a beginner. Tip number 6 really helped me when I was learning BSL Level 1. Practice your greetings and things to start conversations as much as you can, because this is what will really help you to meet, when you're meeting deaf people, to get to know people. So think about the questions and the information that you would ordinarily give when you are meeting people for the first time. I actually have done a whole video on this about introducing yourself in BSL. And again, I'll put the link up so that you can watch that video. I would encourage you to practice that. How are you? What's your name? Where are you from? Those kinds of questions, because when you're meeting deaf people, that's what you want to ask, the same way you would ask anyone else. And if you've got those down, then it will open the door for you in terms of conversations and communication. Whereas if you learn all the signs for food, but you meet someone and you can't communicate with them, then you're going to feel quite discouraged quite quickly. So practice greetings and conversation starters and that will really help you make a great start. And the last tip I have for you is simply don't give up. Don't give up. For me, I'm not somebody, I think, that is very good at learning languages naturally. I wasn't particularly good at studying languages at school. And so learning BSL has been something that I've had to really work at and study. And I'm still studying. And I think it's really important that you take a long-term view. If you're really serious about learning BSL and maybe working with deaf people in the future and so forth, then I would encourage you not to give up. I mean, learning BSL is so much fun. It's so interesting. It opens up a whole world that you would not have access to if you weren't learning that language. So it's been wonderful for me to be a part of that over so many years. And I would encourage you not to give up. Even if you're someone like me who hasn't really learnt languages, any other languages, especially when they're in school or anything like that. It's quite different from learning French or German, and not putting down French or German, but it's quite different because you have people in your own country who you can already speak to and communicate with instantly, and you see the benefit of that. So don't give up, keep practicing. I'll link some websites below that you can access some BSL resources. One of the things that I would encourage you to do, if you haven't already and you're interested in learning BSL, is go on the Signature website. Signature are one of the main examiners and accreditors for British Sign Language courses in the UK. And so you can put the postcode in that website and you can find the nearest BSL course to you. At the moment, there are lots of BSL courses online, but I would encourage you to look for courses that are accredited. And of course, come back to channels like mine to learn your vocabulary and learn different hints and tips that will help you on your BSL journey. So I wish you all the best with learning BSL. Don't forget these tips for more BSL videos. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again in my next video. Until next time, bye-bye.